Okay, to start with, I want to show you the donkey that we're going to carve for the winter project. He's got kind of a nice expression to his face. Nostrils are quite small, but that's the way that it was in the picture, so that's the way I went with it. Certainly not a horse's nostril. I'm looking at my carving there. I likely could have put the eyes around more to the side, but I found the hardest part was not where you would think. The front legs were not that bad. It was getting in and around things, or particularly the back leg here, trying to get that set up with the tail. And to my way of thinking, and I don't remember what a donkey looks like, but that tail looks like it's too heavy, but we'll leave it the way it is right now. But that'll be our go-by for the winter session.
If I go to the valley, I'll see if I can find a donkey.
Yeah, get a picture of a donkey for me. Okay.
A lot of asses up there.
So we want to work on this part here, try and get that set up, and of course that goes around to the back, and the udder we got to make it look like it's bulbous to squeeze out. So this is kind of where most of us are at this stage. So we're going to work our way up, and I think pretty well everybody's got the foot established, so I'm going to use that same gouge I used for it's a number 8, 5mm, to go around below the knuckle joint, where the bend is there, and I'll do the same above and below to create that shape. When it gets into where the udder is, you've got to turn it in just a little bit, but leave enough wood for the udder to be created. So we'll play around with that a little bit and then come back. So there it is with the gouge setting up below and above. Try and create a little bit of a knuckle joint at the back, and so now we'll start shaping it around. And I'll use a flat gouge to do that. A number 5, 7mm, or something similar will work in there. Something like that. Okay, so if you notice that the joint is on an angle, and that corresponds with the angle on in the diagram. You see how it's on an angle coming down, so that the hollow is lower in the front than it is on the back, and just create the same situation here. So a little bit of a knob on the back. So now we've got to work into this hollow that's on the front and create the top of his hip here. So I'll kind of draw that on to give you some sort of an idea. So something like that, so it works into the hollow. Something like that. Can you see that okay? And once again, we got to save the udder. So we're going to create that shape, and we'll come back later and use our V-tools and knife cuts to come in deeper and create the sharper edges that are required for that udder. So I'll set that up. So there it is with the sharp edge. You can see the sharp edge coming down here to give me that shape on the front of that hip. So eventually that'll go right up and end up underneath the tail, so you really won't see the top part of it, whereas on the other side you're going to have to create that of a similar size and shape on the other side eventually. But For now we'll just work on this one side. Okay? The back has already been shaped. So now we'll start to set up the udder and the flare part of the tail. Back with you. Okay, so now we're going to go for depth. We're trying to create a little bit more on the front of this leg. So we're going to get in here and we're going to remove a bunch of wood, and I'll do that with a knife. Before I round over the hip, I'll get my depth established here, because I've got to, at some point or other, find out where this belly is away back in underneath here. And so I got to get back in there and get rid of some of that udder, make it look like it's really shooting out, it's really full. I'll go at it with a knife. So can you see how far in I've got the depth in that corner now? It's in there quite a long ways. So now all I got to do is round over the hip, and then I'll use my gouge upside down to go in and round over the udder. So if by going in upside down, I create that curve that I need. And then I'll play around with the teat, because I've got way too much udder for the amount of teat that I'm going to have left over. So I'm going to have to take some material out in this area in here in order for that to work properly. So, all right. Show you how I use I want to create that. I leave a little bit of a hump for that teeth, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to work my gouge like this to try and get that teeth established. So I'm going to remove a bit of material, just going a little bit at a time, little chips. So I used a V-tool to start to create that sack effect in here. And notice I haven't taken any wood off the bottom of the udder, because that still gives that udder that teat rather, some strength. So remove the wood all the way around with a V-tool, and see how it's turned down now. It starts to turn down and goes underneath. Starts to go back and turning back underneath. Likewise in the front, it starts to turn and go down and underneath. So I'm creating the width of the teat by removing the wood on either side, and somewhat a little bit on the top. Okay, so we'll leave the tail and we'll work on that a little bit later. So now we want to get this udder and make it look bigger. So in order to do that, if we start to use our V-tool and come in around in here and down here, so we end up with a shape. Can you see how deep that is going in there? So we're just going to play around with that. And I use a V-tool to start with, because if you don't use a V-tool, then you have a knife cut in there and it's tough to get rid of that knife cut. But once you're satisfied with the shape of it with a V-tool, then come back with your knife and you can create that nice little shadow that's needed to complete the carving. So we're just going to work with a V-tool originally, or start with, and go right around and create that. So as you can see, I went in quite deep in here with my V-tool to go around, and I started on this side here, went right up and over and around and down on this side here as well. So I'm in there, you know, a good shape, get in there to get that. The idea of that is, so eventually we're going to be able to use this is a number 3 gouge, and I'm going to take away some of this material here, so that'll make that emphasize a little bit more. So massage this a little bit, leave the two hips, but get material out of the in-between. So that helps to separate the two legs by removing the material underneath his bum hole, underneath his tail, where his tail joins on. So I've created that hollow in this area here, and now I'm looking at it and I think I'm going to go take my V-tool and go in a little bit deeper yet. Just gives me a little bit more depth and a little bit more shadow line. So now I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to use the udder as my guide. So the angle that the udder goes in is the angle of what I'm going to put my knife in there. So I'm going to put a stop cut all the way around the outside of that udder, all the way down to the teat on both sides. And by doing that, then I can come back and I can shape the other part in. And I won't use a knife to go in there. I'm more likely to use a gouge, that 3mm gouge, to come into it, but create the stop cut first. So can you see that with just the stop cut put in? You can see the shadow line in there. So I haven't removed any of the material, I just put a stop cut in there by working the knife all the way around. So now I can come in with the gouge and come up to that stop line and create that nice little shadow that's required. So notice the difference once you remove that wood from the outside. Now that udder looks like it's very bulbous, sticking out, and it's squeezed between the legs. So now we can shape the back of the leg and get this shape coming down and work again into the udder here. Again, we'll create that round feature the same as what we did over here, and then of course the other one follows. So we're going to round over the body once the tail has been established width and depth wise. So I'll do that now. So I picked a number 7. This happens to be 6mm, and so I turn it upside down and I work it down around, and that's taking it off the way the grain allows me to do it. So you can work that on the top as well as around the sides to get that nice round shape. Then we'll do the stop cut with a knife. So now we've got the tail established, and we've got this big fly swatter at the end. So give it whatever shape you want, and it's pretty up and down shape there the way it is right now. So I give it some outside shape, and so you're going to put the hairs from about where it goes wide down. So get a shape going that is comfortable to get a V-tool working in there. We'll go ahead and that. So just give it a kind of an outside shape the way I felt it should go. And now I'll...
Inside, if he's going to be, his tail's not touching his belly inside, or like?
I'm going to leave it touching, yeah. That helps me cover up the joint between the udder and the belly. This tail will cover that up quite nicely, so I think I'll just leave it like that.
Mine's not that long, so.
Well, shorten it up, and then you got to accommodate that section in where the udder and the belly joins together. So I'll use a V-tool on that, and maybe a secondary smaller V-tool to give it a little bit different hair. So I used a bigger V-tool at the top and actually all the way down, and then at the very end I used a finer V-tool, because at the end of a bunch of hair, it's kind of an uneven surface down here. So you can even make that even a little bit more exaggerated down here so that the hair doesn't make it all the way, or you've got kind of a brush at the end. And don't forget to do the inside as well. So it starts where the tail widens out from the narrow part up above. That's where you got to do the hair. Looks something like that.